Hello, everybody. Good morning here from the West Coast. I know it may be afternoon for some of you across the country. We still have folks joining in here, so we're going to give it another couple of minutes, but want to just thank you all so much for joining us today. And we'll give it 2 more minutes here, and then we'll be right go. And this is where we awkwardly stare at the camera and don't move this whole time. Luke, I see you're calling in from the new San Diego office down there. So for anybody who hasn't seen our newer San Diego headquarters, you got Luke Chang working out of the office there. I'm already getting texts about wearing a tie. Yes, you know, I step it up every once in a while. So good to know that we've got a lot of great friends on here. And we've got several hundred folks that actually signed up for this today. So we are just going to give it a little bit longer. My apologies for the delay. I think some of the things, you know, I can definitely, you know, talk to as we're waiting here. And I'll just, you know, touch on them again after we get started, though, is don't worry about taking a ton of notes here. We're going to circulate this entire presentation later on today. One thing, and again, I'll repeat this once we get going, but for the 85 of you that are already on here, now 90, I think is if I can see right. Just be sure if you've got questions, I'm going to be looking for questions throughout the presentation. We're absolutely happy to answer any questions that we can. And if we can't answer a question, we'll keep track of those questions and we'll get back to you. But hopefully we have the ability to do a little bit of a lively Q&A session here. And like I mentioned, we'll get started here in just another moment or so. We'll kick it off shortly. Of course, any of you who know or have been to any of my previous conferences or webinars know that the real star has just shown up. So looks like we've got a critical mass here. Very excited again, want to just thank everybody for being here. We're excited to share you know, what we have to discuss about the base rate generator today. You can see we've got a great group of panelists here. Phil Ristori, of course, is one of the owners of MCT, our Chief Operating Officer. Frankly, the man is the architect of everything I hold near and dear to my life and functions as our Chief Technology Officer as well. I'm MCT's Chief Administrative Officer, Chris Anderson. Luke Chang, who's looking like a good finance bro in there with a headset on, is our Director of Product and Pricing. Luke actually came to us from UC San Diego with the same degree as Phil in management science. Phil, of course, got much better grades and was more successful than Luke there. Rob came to us on December 12th, 2012 from UC Davis. We're really lucky to have these great folks join us. Rob is the senior manager of the Northwest Trade Team. And he even used to come in the office occasionally, but we can't get him now. And don't ask me what he's hiding behind that sheet, guys. I'm not sure what. Look, I'll just walk us through the agenda and kick it off to somebody that's a better speaker than me. But look, we're going to cover some of the front-end pricing challenges that we're seeing. Phil's going to give us a great history and current landscape of what we're seeing in investor pricing. We're going to go through some of the features of the base rate generator. Rob and Luke are going to dive into some specific scenarios of the platform and review some of the functionality. And then we'll walk through kind of how and why we're recommending now folks use base rates or custom rate sheets as part of their front end pricing strategy. And again, hopefully we'll have a lively Q&A session. As I mentioned, please feel free to enter questions into the panel on the right-hand side of your screen. I'll be monitoring for those questions. We'll try to answer them as they come. If not, we'll have some time at the end of the session for a lively Q&A. Also, as just for anybody that's joining, We'll be circulating this as a recording, so you'll be able to get back to it. And if there's anything we don't have time or can't answer for you on this call, of course, Phil, Luke, Rob, myself, we're all available for questions down the road. So it's already been way too much Chris Anderson. So let's get this over to the one, the only, Mr. Phil Rizzori.
Well, thank you, Chris. And as expected, you nailed the opener there. Appreciate it. I did not know that Rob started on 12-12-12. That's pretty cool, Rob. And yeah, so I'm going to let the vast majority of this webinar be handled by the team here. I should say Chris and his team, Chris, Rob, and Luke. Just go over what we've created here with the base rate generator. In general, really what I want to cover here is really why we've decided to step into this product in a big way, in this service, and why we think that it's very important for our clients to think about how they're generating front end pricing, or frankly for any lender, how they're generating front end pricing, especially with their base pricing that they're going to deliver into either their PPE or a proprietary system of delivery to the street. So basically, what's occurred over the last basically 8 years is this, a technology driven price, this drive to price granularity. And so if we think about back in, and I'll go through the timeline in a second, but if we think about back in 2016, that was a big move where the spec pay-ups became visible to the lender. So the spec pay-ups and I think actually just Ian or Chris, we have lost the slides. I just want to make sure we're on the same page there. Oh, beautiful, nailed it. But anyway, so as we back in 2016, we had the spec pay-ups at the cash window be visible to the lender, and that was a big development in front end pricing, right? Because it allowed, for the first time, the lender were able to potentially pass this pay up to the front end, and that's at the end of the day, that is the holy grail of pricing, right? Being able to take these pay-ups, these securitization pay-ups that historically have really just existed for, as windfall profits for the securitization organization, and bring those pay-ups and pass them through to the front end so that can, manifest itself in the form of lower rates to the corresponding borrower. And the issue with that, the problem that created for front end pricing, and I should say that that this technology was delivered in 2016 by the agencies. It took a long time, probably 6 or 7 years, for it to really manifest itself in front end pricing, where now lenders are pricing a lot of this pickup into the front end. The problem that exists there from a risk standpoint is that pay up trades at auction, and you can if you're an MCT client, you can talk to your trader about that more in detail if you don't securitize or you're not familiar with that process. But there's basically no TBA to hedge that risk. There's no TBA for a perfect plain vanilla hedge against that specified pay up. And furthermore, for those of you that have looked at cash window pricing, or frankly, even aggregator pricing at those for those low loan balances, or some of the other specs that are coming out, what you'll see is that across the note rate stack, there's a pickup. And it's important to remember what a specified pay up is there for. It's there for because there's less of a potential for that borrower to have an economically viable refinance, right? Because if it's a lower loan balance, it's not going to pay, and that's obvious to a lot of you on the call. And I apologize for insulting your intelligence, but for those that it's not obvious to, there is a, it takes a greater rate movement to make it financially feasible to refinance. And so that
And Phil, it's
that
okay.
that
You can always
yeah,
level down to me being on here. It's fine. Anything you say bad is just directed to me.
yeah,
Everybody.
no, that's good. Well, obviously we were doing it for Anderson. I was timing it, Anderson. It took 3 minutes for you to interrupt me, so that was that was good. That's a new
3
experience.
minutes longer than I thought I'd
We
like.
got to mute Ian. We got to mute him remotely there. But no, from a but when we look at those spec pay ups, that should only occur for rates that are higher than market, right? That's rates that achieve premium pricing. But if you look at it at the note rate stack, they occur even for discount rates. And the bottom line is that's against the financial laws of physics. That should not occur. And so what's happening there most likely is the agencies are looking for those that low income purchase production, or that very low income purchase production, that lip and VLIP production, that they're trying to pay up for, because there's a big overlay with those lower loan balances. But the bottom line is that because that's not it's not a sustainable way to price. We would be very very reluctant to advise somebody to put that into their front end pricing. And so so that's one of the big things. I know I focus on specs there, but we we expect that to continue to get worse as you have more and more spec breakouts. You just had the mission specs that MCT is the first organization to connect to from Fannie. And as you get more and more of these spec breakouts from TBA, you'll continue to accentuate the divergence in price. And so that'll continue to be a front end challenge, and really make it essential to match your front end model to your back end execution. And so Chris will talk about that more in future slides here. And then temporary investor axes, we did notice that really after coming out of 2020, we had a lot of lenders, I should say lender correspondent aggregators. They did not have probably didn't have as much best effort production coming in. And so what we noticed, and that's because a lot of the larger lenders that made it through the last couple of years are hedging, obviously either delivering to the agencies or delivering those aggregators mandatory production. It enabled what we think is it enabled more variability in best effort pricing, because they're not, it's easy to post an extremely aggressive price if you're not getting volume against that pricing. So we're seeing some very some situations where we have substantial, what we call axes, but basically substantially aggressive pricing. So Chris will talk about how we can manage that risk. And then the complex and opaque back end execution really goes into what I talked about earlier with regards to some of the spec pay-ups. Another one I didn't mention was like the AMI FTHB, which really hit us in late 02, beginning of 03, where that LPA waiver really added this level of complexity. There was never before that, never in agency history had AMI, area median income, been in effect for LLPAs, and now it did become an effect. So that leads really into the bottom bullet point there of the technology limitations. We have seen to our surprise, some of the product and pricing engines haven't been able to handle some of these some of these new new pricing challenges that have come up. I didn't talk a lot about co-issue execution, but we definitely, as more and more of our customer base and just lenders in general have not had the cash to retain production, servicing released execution has become a bigger and bigger a bigger and bigger outlet, and that becomes important to look at, from a spec pay, from an excess servicing standpoint, but also just being able to accurately price those grids, and we've seen some challenges there, and the competitive market environment, where I probably should have put that bullet point as the last bullet point here, really, all of these issues, that these 5 bullet points of issues here that I've talked about, they've always been issues. They're technology and the granularity is accentuating these issues. But what's really kind of driving this home right now is the fact that there's just frankly less margin out there to deal with, right? So there's less room for error, from a margin standpoint. So with that, we'll just go quickly through the timeline. I think that I really kind of spoke to this earlier, but basically, you can see that as we see the world in that transparency of, again, specified pay-ups becoming feasible in 2016, co-issue becoming feasible in 2018, potentially bid-tape AOT becoming feasible. And when I say feasible here, I'm talking about front-end pricing, right? Because when it exists to you on the back end, in a transparent form, it becomes feasible to pass to the front end. And so these are all innovations that were created 6 and 8 years ago, that now we feel that using if you can match your front end execution to your back end, will enable you to finally put these pay-ups safely into the front end. And again, I mentioned some of these other bullet points, but again, just at a real high level, we see this as a real turning point in front end pricing, where the lender now has the ability to do what we're all here to do, to pass these executions to the front end. But there's a lot of risk involved with that. So we feel that it's important to use something like our base rate generator to mitigate these risks by matching, and we'll talk about spec margin holdback, things like that, by matching the back end execution to the front end. But Chris, with the next slide, I will pass it to you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. And Phil, I really appreciated what you said about, giving the ability, but also with the responsibility to mitigate the risk, because as we all know, it's not 2020 anymore. The margins aren't as fat as they've always been. And in fact, what we're really looking for is to squeeze every dime, a penny, nickel out of every loan that we're producing, especially with volume as low as it is for some shops. And then other shops are doing a great job where they might be bringing on new branches, or maybe they've opened a new channel. So when we look at the key kind of features of the base rate generator, I just want to clarify that MCT has been in the base rate sheet and base rates and rate sheet generation service for 20 years. We were helping clients build custom rate sheets, back in the good old Excel model days, in the early 2000s. Obviously, our MCT Live platform and all of the APIs and the connectivity and functionality that Phil has been able to bring to bear have really, made generation much different. But we look at this as really the ability to support any type of lender. So there may be clients that are solely aggregator. And if you're creating a base rate sheet, either for in-house or it's a formatted rate sheet for another channel, what we want to make sure you're doing there is that you're using some of our best X tools that Rob and Luke will show to protect yourself from always going to that best X on a front end lock, hedging that loan, and then maybe that investor no longer has that same axe to grind, and you're left with a bag of loans that you originated that maybe you don't have the best back-end execution for. So again, pulling that back-end execution into the front end, mitigating your best X opportunity really helps. And then agency clients can utilize our APIs that the guys are going to show you. And as Phil was talking earlier about being able to best X the co-issues. So looking at all of your SMP executions or Freddie Cash exchange executions are all really substantially powerful tools to help you derive that aggressive but responsible front end price. And certainly, the folks that are securitizing, we're going to be walking through some of the benefits the tool brings, particularly with our unique relationship with Agile Trading Technologies that's looking at 20 plus broker dealers with across 275 mortgage lenders. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. And one of the interesting things that we're seeing is there's an appetite out here in the marketplace, not only from our clients that MCT has now, but also folks that are just looking for a standalone pricing solution. A lot of the reason we got into this space, in addition to everything that Phil and I were talking about, is, hey, it's a demand from some of our clients, right? And so Phil has done an amazing job of taking the use cases that our clients are bringing forward to us. I mean, just yesterday we were on a call. We have another call a little bit later today about potentially, using Fannie forwards as a way to help create a builder lock rate sheet that enables mortgage lenders to get into this builder space. And Phil's drive and frankly his passion for this, even though he's not looking up right now, he is passionate about this. And when Phil's passionate about something, it seems to manage to get ahead of all of my other development requests. So, that's one of the key features here, is that we use this to support everybody. And then Rob or Luke, did you guys want to jump in, or Rob, did you want me to just continue through these key features here, sir?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to jump in. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining. This is Rob Barnhill here, the team lead for the Northwest Trade Desk. And I have pretty extensive experience with this base rate generator, working with Phil over the years to help, develop and test it and receive feedback from clients as far as what they're looking for, as Chris mentioned, and help this, become a really powerful instrument to help generate front-end pricing. So the calculating base rates for automated PPE upload, we've got a variety of formats. Luke and I will show you kind of in the setup that are digestible across all pricing engines. And we can also, of course, accommodate new formats as needed from a CSV or XLS standpoint. Generating customized and formatted static rate sheets. So not just a flat file for uploading to your pricing engine, but also a formatted rate sheet for publishing, for a TPO or a consumer direct channel that could have a logo, contact information, as well as LLPA grids. So more of the traditional rate sheet that we're used to seeing, maybe even printed out or published daily. Day one margin, that's been a topic, as Chris mentioned, since 2020, when margins were great and volume was huge. Things have gotten a little bit tighter now, and so managing those margins is critical. And this is one of many tools to help create a day one margin and then easily track it from your back end execution that you're pricing to your front end, and make sure that that is maintained throughout the course of that loan being hedged. Spec margin holdback, Mr. Rizzori covered that extensively as far as the reason for needing the spec margin in your front end pricing, but also the risks there that the volatility creates. And our feature allows you to control how much of that spec margin is passed through from the either aggregator rate sheet that publishes a separate tranche for each loan amount, or agency API based pricing that is paid up for based on the note rate and the loan amount. So we'll show that a little bit more detail here in a couple slides. Best execution blending, again, a great tool for controlling margins on the front end, where you're not necessarily passing through your 100% best X price, but instead maybe a blend of your top two or top three, or even taking a more conservative approach using your second or third best, and then help identify outliers or potential arbitrage opportunities for best effort investors that might be sticking out on that front end. TBA indications, this is going to be more pertaining to securitizing or MBS pooling executions, where there are some higher note rates and somewhat illiquid coupons that you may not have great data on. So instead of using a TradeWeb or a Bloomberg feed to use for pricing, you can reach out to an agile approved dealer and receive an indication and use that as a basis to create a base price for MBS executions. Various margin management tools within the rate sheet tool itself, by product, note rate, investor, lock period, and that would be supplemental to any margins that you may have built into the pricing engine surrounding your front end pricing. Float carry, again, we'll dive into this a little bit more detail with some examples, but the idea is to account for the interest carry on loans that are potentially going to be executing to a Ginnie or Fannie Freddie MBS pool, and when those loans settle relative to when that loan is expected to close, and the difference there and what that interest carry creates from a pricing perspective with the days of interest baked into the price on the front end. Playing right into that float carry, so you can base that calculation off of a standard settle, or you can adjust that settlement to be earlier in the month, and your interest carry will adjust accordingly. All the rate sheets that are generated are stored historically and accessible via audit and archive features. And there's also various reports that we can run and do comparisons on different rate sheets from same day or even previous week or months runs.
And just to be clear, we're saving those in AWS, not under that sheet in boxes behind Rob. And lest anybody be confused, we do have a hybrid work posture, and Rob is working from his home office today. MCT is doing fine. We're doing great. We aren't renting out, space in a storage unit as well. But Rob, that's awesome. Thank you. Here, I'll move on here. You and Luke want to jump in to kind of hear what we're showing here?
Right, thank you, Rob and Chris. And then the next few slides, we'll have a couple of screenshots of the tool, just to give you a look into the day-to-day of generating the tool and how you would use it. So we're going to be hopping in a little bit here. What this is showing you is in our platform here, all existing in one place. It will be just another tab added to your profile. This will show you the rate sheet generation tool. On the left-hand side here is a couple of our sample rate sheets that I've built out just for this demo purposes, where you can see, like Rob was mentioning, the different business channels that you're able to generate, like your retail, your TPO, or your correspondence. Well, we also
Luke, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize, but that price discovery is something that we found, that's actually really an interesting. We've gone out and shared this with a lot of our existing client base and some folks outside of MCT, and it was a surprising use cases. A lot of folks are interested in using this solely for price discovery purposes. So they may stack up on one rate sheet all of their aggregators, run a best X, create a rate sheet, and then compare it, for example, to their agency to kind of figure out, hey, how much room do they have? So that's been a really interesting component. And then Luke said it, but just to be clear, this tool sits in MCT Live, which is the capital markets platform that Phil has built, and so it has all of the resiliency. It is optimized for speed. All of those same things that you've come to expect from your hedge platform exist here in MCT Live for the rate sheet tool as well. Sorry, Luke, go ahead, sir.
That's exactly right. And on the right-hand side here, you can see a list of your investor iterations that we are able to support to build off of for the rate sheet. So in here, you can see, like we mentioned before, your agency, your cash mandatory pricing, your Fannie cash and your Freddie cash. as well as your best efforts iterations as well. All of those iterations can be used and set up here to your rate sheets. We also have your MBS iterations, or for clients or lenders that are Ginny approved with Ginny directly. We're able to build off of security pricing and load those in to generate your in-house rate sheet. Chris, can you please go to the next slide? All right, so now diving a little further, this is just a rate sheet setup after you click the edit button here. And like what Rob was saying, that we have a couple of file layouts that we're able to preset here, and we're able to build out additional ones as well. So we have all the pricing engines in here. We also have a generic template that a lot of our other PPE options are able to map to the generic format and load into their system. There's a couple of logistics here where we're able to customize that rate sheet name, have an option for a CSV export, a component layout to just view the audit files. And as you can see here in the program list, we have a couple of sample products that we're able to build out and customize to your needs.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to add too, Luke, is while not in production, everybody can kind of stay tuned. We're working with some of the leading pricing engines out in the space for even tighter connectivity. Right now, you would generate this and either upload directly, manually upload into the pricing engine, or email it out, and then the pricing engines would absorb it. But we're looking at some even tighter connectivity. Now, even more important, I've just been texted that some people are seeing Mr. Rizzori upside down. If that's the case, he's not upside down on my screen, but it's somehow my fault for sure.
Yeah, I do. I do want to apologize about that if that's the case. I am running this from a new iPad, which they said they could do could double as a computer. Apologize about that. We got a screenshot where I was actually upside down. That's pretty weird. So if that's the case,
if he is upside down, that means the man is that good even upside down. So pretty good. Luke, should I move on to the next slide here?
Yes, please. And then further along on the rate sheet setup, you're able to set up a program in here. What we're looking at here is a Con15 product. We're able to select on the component investor dropdown, in this case, a Fannie Cash Lakeview versus your Fannie Mae iteration. By default, we have that best X modification settings to show the best option per program, rate, and lock period. But if we're going to introduce additional iterations for granularity, we're able to put in your second best, third best, or blend of the top 2, 3, 5, or entire investor components.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, this becomes really important if you're using front-end aggregator pricing, or even if, let's say, you're using your 7-day aggregator pricing, just because that best effort pricing does have a little more volatility for some of the reasons that Mr. Rizzori was covering before, whether he was upside down or right side up while he was covering them. Points are still valid, but here's where you really want to just kind of avoid getting yourself always being selecting the best X on those rate sheets where someone's got an axe to grind. And then again, that has the consequences potentially of not being able to deliver it after you hedge the loan and the investor still having that same axe to grind. So we really like having this flexibility available to you. And go ahead, Luke, sorry, or move on to the next here.
Yes, please. Yeah, and the next few slides will be a couple of highlights of the functionality. We can really dive into, a lot of these key features here on a separate demo call. But in this one, we want to highlight is the spec margin holdback. So this is a screenshot of me building out the 125 spec product, as you can see in the program dropdown. And you will have an option in here to select the spec margin holdback option. So you're able to set a spec rule. In this case, I'm setting a spec rule on a Freddie cash window. If I click edit, that will pop up this right-hand page, which will show you the holdback. It will give you analysis if you compare between your spec product, in this case the 125, versus your base program, which is the Con 30. You can drop down by delivery period and click compare. That will give you, the comparison between the two spec programs and give you that spec pay up difference. On that spec pay up difference, we're able to add in a percentage holdback. In this case, I'm putting in 20%. Or you can also add in an absolute holdback or a max absolute holdback. So once
I'm sorry, Luke, I just wanted to say this is a great example of an enhancement set. And by the way, Phil, I'm getting several folks telling me that you are appearing right side up on their screen. So maybe just Scott Holtz on our sales team is trying to throw us off here. But this, and Phil, you may want to jump in here too. But here's a great example of clients really had this use case that, hey, if we don't want to pass on all of the spec pay up, right? And so they needed this ability to control, and we really recommend mitigating that amount because there is volatility, as everybody knows, in that spec pay up. So if you go out with 100% of that spec pay up, and if you're solely relying on aggregator rate sheets on the front end that maybe have the full spec pay up in there, again, this is an opportunity where you create your own base rate sheet for your hedgeable production. You mitigate the amount of the spec that you're going to pass through to the originator. And in some cases, if you're not pricing to your custom rate sheet, then you may in fact want to lock that loan best efforts. Now look, as a hedge advisory firm, MCT doesn't routinely go out telling you, hey, maybe you don't want to be locking a loan into the hedge. But in fact, sometimes those axes are such that the analysis would actually ferret out that in fact you do, in order to make those pennies, those nickels, those dimes on each loan, you do in fact want to lock that loan best efforts. And so this gives you, this is another tool in your arsenal to really drive an accurate, have the ability to drive an accurate, aggressive price, but the responsibility to mitigate that price with these tools. Phil, did you want to jump in on any of that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Chris. Yeah, I do think that this is something that, as Rob had said, I focused on at the outset of the call. We definitely see this as the future, right? That you're going to continue to see more and more of these breakouts of loan balance. If you think about where we are of conforming loan limits of $750,000, you're going to continue to get higher and higher spec breakouts, which means that you're going to continue to get more and more of these tranches, which in turn means that you're going to get a continual degradation of TBA pricing. And so what that means is you're going to get a higher and higher difference over time between these specs and your straight up Con 30. And that means, of course, that you're going to need to price these to the front end. And therein lies the risk, right? And so you need to be able to hold back a piece of this. We're going to add in differentiation by execution. We're going to be adding in differentiation by lock term. But no, this is a huge reason why, for those of you that are putting, and most of you are putting these products to your front end rate sheet, you absolutely have to have a tool like this that's backing off a certain percentage of that payout.
Hey, Phil, it looks like we've got a question from John Hurley asking about hedging those specs using different durations.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We have basically a regression analysis where for those customers that have a lot of specs in their pipeline, we can we have a what we call loan duration regression analysis functionality, and you basically, it just regresses that program against the TBA program, and then shows the differential. So for instance, this 125 would probably have about a 10 to 15% greater greater duration for the corresponding for the corresponding note rate. One additional thing that just to John's question that's interesting, you know, there's a thought out there that regressions wouldn't work, right? Because remember what I talked about earlier, as you went below par, you should actually that pickup should go away. And in that case, a straight line regression wouldn't work. The fact is, you can look at the cash window, that pickup does not go away. It is there. And so that so the regression is the best way to handle it because there is no TBA associated with it.
Yeah, and John Hurley, thank you so much for that question. I think, John, you're with a new consulting firm, if I recall correctly, called Secondary Solutions. And so really appreciate the question there and your insight as always. And it's good to see you in New York. Let's see. So Luke and Rob, shall I move on to the next slide? But again, another of the, you know, the spec margin holdback tool, something that clients really needed. I think, gosh, from request to production, Phil was able to, you know, get that in production in just a few weeks, and really, and we're still working on enhancements. I think one of the things that I routinely hear from our clients is, you know, the users of the tool are, you know, we have north of 20 users already, actually more than that, I think, but is the speed at which Phil is able to digest information, understand the use case scenario, and if it is something that is going to be broadly applicable, the ability to get it out, tested, and into production as quickly as possible. So that's always been a big positive here. All right, so moving on here, you guys want to jump in and talk a little bit about the float calculation?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Thank you for that explanation, Phil, on the spec durations. That was very informative. But this float calculation here goes into what we mentioned earlier about the loans being securitized and the difference in timing from when a loan is expected to close relative to when it is actually pooled and settled, and the interest carry that's associated with that. So in part of the setup, when incorporating the MBS executions, you would have a cost of capital, which is typically an index such as the SOFR index, and then your rate, which would be your warehouse line rate. That then goes into the cost of capital, which is divided by your daily interest method, and then adjusted by note rate. And you'll see this calculated daily interest here based on note rate, and then that is multiplied by the number of days in the float, calculated by the month that security is being slotted into. So in this example, we're looking at the 30-day, and it's got 18 days of float. So those calculated daily interest would be multiplied by the 18 days, and then your price would get adjusted. That add early settlement feature allows you to shift that from a standard settle to earlier in the month, and then your float days would calculate accordingly. And your coupon pay up breakdown there at the bottom shows you a little bit of data on the difference between those settlement dates and the implications for potentially doing an earlier settle with in this case, July versus August settlement, and what that delta is there. Thank you, Chris.
All right, thanks, Rob. So also with our clients that are lenders that, you know, are building off of security pricing, and you know, with MBS pricing, we have this coupon analysis and agile indication that really sets this tool apart. On the top bar there will be a coupon analysis button, which will bring out that pop-up window here, and we're able to select your MBS investor iteration. And when you click analyze, you'll be able to see the current, you know, coupons that we're pulling the security off of. So here you're going to see by security the low and high coupon, and to the right of it, you're able to override the price as an adjuster or entirely by the handle.
Yeah, and I was just going to jump in. Well, two things. One, it's clear that we need to get some of these younger, better-looking guys on. I mean, not better looking than Phil, better looking than me, of course, because Luke, Pete Thomas is chanting your name over here because he's so happy to see you here. But you know, this is one of those areas that I am particularly excited about, and it's just something that frankly doesn't exist anywhere else in this format. So again, I mentioned earlier that because of MCT's relationship as a customer of Agile Trading Technologies, we have this unique ability and kind of perfect visibility of the 275 plus mortgage lenders that are trading TBAs and getting RFQs all day long, bids and offers. We're seeing all of that for the 21, 22 different broker dealers on the Agile platform. So number one, that gives us a lot of market insight, and Phil's going to be doing some exciting stuff with that information down the road. But in a specific use case, let's say you're a builder. Wendy Johnson, a great client of ours, is constantly pinging us for more insight into coupons that might not be trading that liquid. And here's a vehicle that you can actually go out to your broker dealers that are on the Agile platform and request indications from them. So let's say if there were you wanted to originate down to a 5.99 or a 6.25 because you've got a longer term builder lock that you want to offer, and there's no market data in your traditional market viewers, you can request that information right from your Agile trader or Agile broker dealers. Have that data return in and then populate that data in. So you're not cutting and pasting or on the phone or sending emails to several different broker dealers. And this is something that has been incredibly well received from our client base and appreciated. And Phil, did you want to jump in on any of that? So I know you're kind of the architect of this ability here.
No, I think you hit it right on the head, Chris. I think that look, this is knock on wood. We haven't had a big moving market recently, but as you transition coupons, right, ever since the Fed has kind of gone from the supporting role to the neutral role to now the roll off role where they're negative. They're not selling, but they're not a supporter, obviously, of the market. You have situations where when you transcend coupons, so if we continue to rise in rate here, and all of a sudden, let's say a 7.5 coupon becomes a thing, that's going to be very, frankly, may not even have an actual indication price, or an 8 coupon, God forbid, may not have an indication price for certain securities like Ginnie securities on those electronic screens. When they don't have that price, to what Chris and Luke were just speaking about here, you can actually reach out electronically to your broker dealers and see what your execution would be on that specific security. This is not a hittable execution, to be clear. This is an indication, right? But they're gonna send back what they're generally seeing. So this is essential for, especially for those of you that are, going to be doing lower loan balance production, purchase production, where costs need to be paid for. Obviously, you're always sitting at the top of that rate stack, and anytime the market moves up, you're in one of these transcended coupons where there's just simply not a lot of liquidity until we've sat there for a while.
Thanks very much, Phil. Luke, did you want to cover anything else on this screen?
No, next slide, please. Thanks, Chris.
And just a reminder to everybody on the call, Rob, Luke, myself, we've done, quite a few of these demos. We're always happy to do it. We find that we can run through quite a bit in, 30 to 45 minutes. So if you're interested in scheduling a demo with us, our contact info will be submitted with the recording. But of course, you can also always call your MCT sales team, trading team, CSG, pricing team, data integration team, you name it, they'll get it to us here. So yeah, Luke, why don't you go ahead and walk through this screen here as well.
Yeah, and this is another key I wanted to highlight here. Rob did mention it a little earlier about the archive rate sheets on the top left button here. That would pop out this archive rate sheets where you're able to see the rate sheet that has been generated, the user that generated for tracking purposes. And you're able to download and pull historical runs. On the far right, you're going to see the action column, and you're able to compare generate a comparison file between your current run versus a previous run in time. So you're able to see how the market has moved versus your current generation.
And this is something that's really popular when we run through demos, but you can imagine there's a couple of use cases for this. Number one, 12 months from now when you're doing your financial audit and you have to back into those rate sheet prices, we've got all of the analysis here for you. You can pull that rate sheet easily. The other time is, also when it's not a financial audit, but it's a regulatory audit. Again, you have this all accessible to you. Another time is when you've got an originator in your office complaining about your pricing, why your pricing was better 2 months ago or 6 months ago or a couple of weeks ago. And so right now we have the ability to compare your current pricing run to any run in the past. Phil's also working on giving us a point-to-point analysis, so you could compare May 30th to May 27th if you wanted to. And one of the things that we really like to show folks in a demo, and so encourage you if you're interested to schedule that, is looking at these audit files that are generated, because we're able to give you some really good insight into what the component of the pricing is, how those components stack up against the last run or the last day. And so those are really exciting. It works a little bit better in a dynamic demo, but just suffice it to say there's a lot of power here in having this data at your fingertips to be able to run analysis on. Can I move on to the next slide here? Of course, Phil's always talking so much that we're running out of time here. It's never me talking too much. So how and why to build base rate sheets or custom rate sheets. So this is something that, look, many of you might know me from our outsourced lock desk service. That was the first division that Phil brought me on to run here, and both Rob and Luke actually began on our lock desk. And one of the big benefits of that is developing really, really smart, talented folks with that secondary boot camp and having the opportunity to actually interface with rate sheets and pricing engines all day long, to talk to originators, to really understand the fundamentals of pricing. And so while Luke is, director of our pricing team, and Rob's a senior team leader of one of our trading teams, we really feel like that's made us holistically stronger, for the folks that have come through that side of the business. But, if you had talked to me 10 years ago, you might have seen more folks using a house rate sheet. But then you've had the proliferation of outlets. I mean, it's not uncommon for us to have gone, geez, Phil, I think we were talking, it was something like 3 to 6 investors in a best X, and now you've got 20 plus. And then if you look at all of their S&P executions, cash exchange executions, bulk execution versus a rate sheet execution, 20 plus investors could in fact be 40 executions. So there has been this proliferation of pricing. And so originators have gotten very used to seeing a lot of options when they're out pricing alone. And so I wouldn't be saying, hey, create a rate sheet for your hedgeable product using the base rate generator and take away all of your best effort executions if that's what you're showing your originators now. Instead, I would say feather that in. And what the base rate generator is going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you, as we said, it's going to allow you to inform that front end price with your back end best execution. So there's no decoupling or two separate things. You're at apples to apples. You're not apples to oranges, you're apples to apples now. And so anytime your apples to apples comparison is showing you that a best effort investor has an axe to grind on the day the loan is being initially locked, and that axe to grind is sufficient enough to beat your front end price that's been informed by your back end price, then you really need to look at whether that loan should be locked best efforts or not. Now, having run hundreds of lock desks over my time in the mortgage business and worked with them, you can't sit down and run a best X on every single lock that comes in. So you look for ways at which you can kind of streamline that process and take advantage of that axe or potential to arbitrage. And what you'll see is that by feathering in that base rate that you've generated using your, the margin you want to achieve, the lift over best efforts you want to achieve, anytime that price isn't your winning price, then hey, maybe you have your lock desk to lock that best efforts. Everything else might even be auto locked, for example. You might build some rules around the custom rate sheet being auto locked. So it actually can be a tool to help make your lock desk more efficient. One of the things we learned as Phil was driving the hammer on making the lock desk more efficient, more efficient, more efficient, was using tools within our proprietary software, Lock Desk Live, to pre-screen loans to see if they would be hedged or not. And here's a very easy rule. Hey, if it's priced to Chris Anderson Mortgage Bank, hedge it. If it isn't, lock it best efforts or take a second look at it. Also, we know by informing that front end price through back end execution, your day one margin isn't going to be being benchmarked to an unachievable best efforts price that may not be there when you go to sell the loan. Again, when we talk to clients, this is a bigger problem for some clients than it is for others. And regardless of whether you're using our tool or not, our trading team, all of the different folks you're working with at MCT are going to be encouraging you to just make sure your lock desk is paying attention to looking for those axes during the lock process. The other thing is, look, as I mentioned earlier, we've been building rate sheets. Historically, we did it in Excel. Back in 2021, Phil created the rate sheet generator in MCT Live. So the base rate generator really takes all of the enhancements, and Phil has made several of them. And we really feel like a lot of those advancements and enhancements don't exist in the marketplace elsewhere. And he's brought all of those to fruition. So that's why we've really re-released this tool as a much stronger tool. And it's really taking the same tools that Luke and his team, or Rob and their team, use when they're creating rate sheets themselves, and it's putting them in the hands of our clients. So much like an autonomous client on our hedge side can graduate over into generating their own hedge position, doing their own loan sales, doing their own trading. This is really meant to be a self-service tool, but a self-service tool that is backed up with what MCT is known for, which is bringing a lot of education, a lot of the enhancements that Phil brings with great use cases, but know that we're all here to support you. And you can see that both Phil Rizzori, myself, we've got another director, a team leader here. This is something we care about passionately, and something that we really feel like it's important. So look, 10 years ago, I would have said you don't need it. Hell, 3 years ago, I would have said you probably don't need it. But now you need to be running your pricing in the same way that aggregators are running theirs, or larger shops are running theirs. And we can't all have 2 or 3 pricing analysts, but what we can use is really cutting edge software that allows us to do as much as we can with the labor that we have available. And if we can help you kind of save some time by streamlining your lock desk process and give you repurposed time able to kind of work on your pricing, we think it's a win-win for you. Phil, did you want to add anything there, sir? I know I got on a diatribe. I appreciate
No, that was great, Chris. Curtis and I are always concerned that maybe you're not pitching this thing well enough, and you nailed it right there. So that was great. You had me sold. No. This is no. I'm just kidding. This is Chris hit it right on the head. When he said that 3 years ago, this was not as big of a deal, right? And we're continuing. You're just going to continue to see in our mind. There could be things like the mission scores, for instance. Those could turn around. They could go the other way with a change of administration. But regardless of administration or FHFA kind of direction, you're going to continue to see granularity in pricing. You're going to continue to see breakouts as technology continues to march us further and further on price efficiency. And so it's going to become more and more important to match that front end model with your back end model.
Yeah, 100% agree, Phil. And the last thing is, of course, as everybody has been out there searching for volume, the other need that we've run into clients having is, hey, Chris, I need a formatted rate sheet. Phil, I need a formatted rate sheet so I can pass it on to Loan Sifter, or I can put it in Lender Price's broker portal, or I can just get it out in front of my non-traditional originators through a broker channel. So if you need a formatted rate sheet for a TPO channel, or something that is outside of retail, again, the tool will give you a formatted rate sheet. And again, we just think, if you need that, we want you to know that MCT has it available for you. And again, we really do feel like there is value here all the way, to somebody who's, maybe an aggregator only, but you started a TPO channel, right? There's value here for you. Maybe you have an existing rate sheet tool. We'd love you to take a look at our mousetrap here. And we think it's better. I know it's better because Phil built it. But this is probably less about going out as a new commercial opportunity and more about kind of adhering to our fiduciary responsibility as your trusted capital markets partner, which sometimes that tagline drives me crazy because it seems a little too easy, but that's really what we're doing here. We know there's a need here. We know there's ability for you to tighten your pricing and ensure your profitability. So if this isn't something that we've spoken to you about yet, please reach out to us. We want to talk to you about it, and we want to make sure that you know that it's available. And again, Phil has done some amazing things here that just don't exist elsewhere, and we're going to be building more of them. And in fact, we have a call in 30 minutes, Phil, just as a reminder, to get back on with another client talking about those builder locks and how we can incorporate some benchmarking to make this strong. So I want to just thank Phil. Did you have any closing words? Sorry.
No, that was great. No, I will let you close out, Chris. Again, no, great job by Rob and Luke, and yourself, Chris. I think that, like Chris said, we're going to continue to invest in this product, right? So we're going to continue to invest in additional features, additional bells and whistles, but also additional pricing mechanisms that can protect you from a risk standpoint, especially with longer term locks.
Yeah, that's great. And I want to echo your thanks to Rob and Luke. Very, very honored to be working with you guys and Phil on this project. It's been super exciting. And I want to thank everybody for jumping on board. And again, I'm sorry Phil talked so much and ate up all our time. What can I do? But if you have questions, I see a few that we didn't get to in the chat. We'll follow up with you. But always feel free to reach out. And thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, guys.